Well, two championships have been won and done in NBL1 North. It's a massive congratulations to the Northside Wizards women's team and the Ipswich Force men's team on their titles at the weekend. 2 down, 8 to go. Hello and welcome to a grand final edition of the NBL1 show. I'm Megan Hustwaite. We are fully in grand final mode now. So North, as I mentioned, their champions have been crowned, and now it's over to West, Central, South and East. Grand finals, standalone deciders, all on the line this weekend. And then next week, we're off to WA for the national finals. We cannot wait. Well, let's crack straight into it and talk to our experts. And let's go up north first and speak to John Guana about the champions. Well, the NBL1 North champions have been crowned, and it's a huge congratulations to Northside in the women and to Ipswich in the men. And to wrap up the biggest of big basketball weekends, of course, is John Guana. Welcome, John. And wow, what an incredible weekend and 5 grand final games.
Massive weekend. It was huge. It was epic. The women's games were not as close as the men's games, but I think we have 2 deserved champions for sure in the NBL1 North.
Well, let's crack in and start with the Ipswich Force knocking over the Rollers 2-1. You called that entire series, so you've had a busy or as busy weekend as the players. But tell us a bit about how it unfolded, because the Rollers did take advantage in Game 1.
They certainly did, and after Game 1, I think a lot of people were thinking it was not looking good for Ipswich. Gold Coast picked up a win, 100-86, and they got off to a great start in that particular game. Gold Coast jumped on them early, and it looked like Ipswich was playing with a little bit of nerves. They were a little bit anxious. Their shots weren't falling. They weren't really playing team basketball. They did start to come back a little bit in that third quarter, but Gold Coast had a great response to and really just rolled home in the win. It ended up being a 186 win for Gold Coast in Game 1 on Friday night. Todd Blanchfield was great in that one. He had 27 points and 14 rebounds. Jason Kadee, the king of the North, he was 1 rebound away from a triple-double in that one. And Ipswich really struggled from the field. They were only 37% from the field. They only shot 37% from 3. And they got out-rebounded, which was quite surprising because Ipswich had a size advantage. Gold Coast out-rebounded them by 25 rebounds, including 19 offensive rebounds. So a few troublesome signs for Ipswich in that first game. But, man, they bounced back in a huge way on Saturday. They picked up a massive 119-98 win, and it was like night and day. It almost felt like the roles were completely reversed. As good as Gold Coast was and as average as Ipswich was on Friday night, it was Ipswich who looked amazing on Saturday, and Gold Coast looked pretty average, to say the least. Ipswich shot over 50% from the field in Game 2, 52.4% to be exact. They shot 40% from 3, and then they won the rebound count by 13 rebounds, and they had 16 offensive rebounds as well. All 5 players that started the game for Ipswich scored in double figures, led by Nathan Sobey, the Olympian, the MVP. He ended up being the MVP. He had 39 points and 6 rebounds in that game. Kyron Galloway was awesome as well. He was shooting the ball from 3 in this series. He finished Game 2 with 21 points and 7 rebounds. Jalen Galloway was a few rebounds and a couple of assists off a triple-double, and he was fantastic. We do have to highlight Todd Blanchfield. I know everyone saw it on social media. Definitely, in my opinion, the dunk of the year on Deng Deng. He was amazing in Game 2. He had 40 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists, but it really, really looked like Gold Coast's legs left them in that game. They couldn't finish strong, and they looked physically exhausted. It was a super, super physical series. Ipswich, really, you could see the intention. They wanted to get in the paint. They were looking to attack the rim, and they were really physical defending Gold Coast. And the referees let them play, and Ipswich took full advantage of it. And you could see at the end of Game 2 that Gold Coast was starting to feel really, really tired and testing their depth. And then when we came back for Game 3, it was pretty much all over Red Rover. Gold Coast started really well. They were up 4-0, but then Ipswich rattled off 15 straight points in that game, and they never looked back. They picked up the win. They picked up the championship with a 109-85 win in Game 3 on Sunday. It was a really, really phenomenal performance. And like I said, it was night and day from that first game. Ipswich looked scared, looked like they weren't ready to be on the big stage, and Gold Coast took full advantage of it. But they flipped the switch big time in games 2 and 3, and they absolutely blew away the Gold Coast. In the game on game 3, dang, 41 points, 13 rebounds. He was 16 of 28 from the field, 8 of 14 from 3. The MVP, Nathan Sobey, was awesome as well. 21 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. Jalen Galloway had 16 points and 4 rebounds. And I'd be crazy not to mention the captain, Jason Ralph. The unofficial, official mayor of Ipswich was inspirational in the win and in the series. He switched as well, going into attack mode offensively over the course of games 2 and 3, and I thought that was a huge difference for Ipswich. The confidence they played with, and really just being the first team to throw the punch and put the pressure onto the Gold Coast was super, super impressive. Megan, this was the team that everyone thought we were going to see throughout the entire season, and it took a while for them to get there, but man, they got there in a big way on the biggest stage possible. They hit their stride in the finals. They had that massive comeback from the semifinal in Logan, and then to go on the road, lose game 1 in Gold Coast, and come back and win the 2 games to win the series and lift the trophy. This is why Ipswich was one of the favorites coming in, and I tipped against them, and I'm happy to be wrong. They were so impressive in games 2 and 3. It was really, really phenomenal to see this team hitting on all cylinders. They were so impressive. I don't think I have enough words to describe how impressive they were.
Yeah, it was a performance for the ages, and it's one thing to come back after losing game 1 and to square the series. We do see it a lot in basketball, but to actually come from 1-0 down to square the series and then win it is phenomenal and very rare. So congratulations to Ipswich, and congratulations to both teams. So much talent, so many good people, 2 great clubs. It was just a fantastic way to end the NBL1 North men's season.
It was, and I do want to say the 3-game series is unique to NBL1 North, but I think we saw in this weekend and in this series in particular why it's so important and why it's such a great thing for the teams to have that opportunity to bounce back from a loss. I talked to Coach Chris Riches after the game, game 1, and he was really confident. I thought he would be a little more down, but he just said, hey, it wasn't our night. Gold Coast played as good as they possibly can. We played as bad as we possibly can. The thing that's great, we get another go at it tomorrow. And man, they got that another go, and they took full advantage of it. So I think the 3-game series is a great way to end the season because, like we said last week, it gives teams an opportunity to bounce back, and Ipswich showed what they can do if you get that second chance.
Yeah, the best team wins a series, and that was the case in NBL1 North Women's because the Northside Wizards wove their magic, not for the first time this season, to sweep Rocky 2-0, and no surprise, it was the woman of the moment, the woman of the year really, Courtney Woods. What an incredible 2023 she's had, and she's won everything on offer in NBL1 North.
She certainly has won the MVP, averaged 18 points a game, 7 rebounds, and the most impressive stat again, the 7.5 assists. We forget Courtney Woods is not a point guard. She's had to step in and play point guard and have the ball in her hands throughout the season, and it obviously is not a bad thing. She won the regular season MVP award, she won the Grand Final Series MVP, and her team is the NBL1 North champions, and they did it in impressive fashion in that 2-0 sweep of Rockhampton. In Game 1, it was a blowout, 35 points. Northside won 87-52. A.J. Johnson was amazing in that game. They had 23 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists. Courtney Woods was kind of quiet and kind of pedestrian by her standards with 13 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists. The thing that I love about Northside is they're deep and they use that depth to their strengths. They pressure the ball, they like to get out and run, and they were going to put Rockhampton under a lot of pressure. And to me, the biggest challenge for Rockhampton was always going to be whether they could match the offensive output of Northside. And in Game 1, they certainly didn't do that. They didn't slow down Northside either. They were going to have to win it defensively in a really hard slog. And when you give up 80-plus points or 85-plus points to Northside, you're going to be in a bit of trouble. And Northside Northside prevailed in that game one. Lara McSpadden was held to 12 points and 4 rebounds. Tia Hay had 13 points and 3 rebounds. Sam Bowman was kind of quiet in game one, and that was going to be a key for Rockhampton. And I thought Northside did a great job keeping Bowman pretty quiet and really keeping Rockhampton quiet as well. The thing that also jumped out at me, rebounding-wise, I thought Northside did a good job on the glass. They only gave up 12 offensive rebounds, and they actually out-rebounded Rockhampton in that game 49-38, which was always going to be key. Rockhampton is a very strong team. They have a lot of size up front with McSpadden and Bowman, and I thought Northside did a good job keeping or limiting their second chance opportunities so they couldn't get a few cheap buckets and keep themselves in the game. Northside jumped on them and never looked back. And then, in game two, it was a little bit of the same. I think Rockhampton came out with a little bit more intent, but Northside was just too classy for them. They won 70-59 to wrap up the championship at home. Again, Courtney Woods leading the way, 23 points, 7 rebounds, 10 assists. Lil Dart was great with 17 points. AJ Johnson, another double-double, 16 points and 10 rebounds. And again, they limited the second chance opportunities for Rockhampton. McSpadden had a great game in game two, 20 points and 12 rebounds. Bowman also had a double-double, 10 points and 11 rebounds. But the offensive output wasn't enough. The Northside defense didn't really get a lot of credit, but they pressure the ball, they defend well, they rebound well, and then they hurt you in transition, and that's what they did in this game to wrap it up. And again, very much like we just said before with the men, Northside was the dominant team in NBL1 North. They were going to be the team to beat. They dropped a couple of games, but I think, we talked about it a couple times throughout the year. It's probably a good thing that they didn't go into finals undefeated. They tasted that defeat and a couple of defeats in the regular season. But again, they hit their strides. They reset themselves. They rode a massive season from Courtney Woods, a great year from A.J. Johnson and Nadine Payne and Lil Dart and Georgia Dale. And the list goes on and on. The depth of this team is great. And again, a deserved championship for Northside. What a finish to the season for the Wizards.
Yeah, it was fantastic to see it, and great scenes as they won game two and took the championship. Before we let you go, John, great to see Grace George out at the grand finals over the weekend. I had a quick chat to her yesterday, and it's wonderful to see her back at a basketball court and being part of the game she loves. So that was definitely another highlight for everyone on grand final weekend.
It was awesome, and you should have seen the ovation that the Ipswich fans gave to Grace when she walked into the building. It really was inspirational, and for me, obviously Grace loves the game, and she wants to be a part of it, and she was a part of it. She was sitting right there at the end of the bench for all of the games. The Ipswich fans certainly behind her, and not just the Ipswich fans, but everyone across NBL1 North and across the NBL1 has really been jumped behind the cause for Grace, and we wish her again all the best in her recovery. I know that the auction is going to be closing, but I know there's still a GoFundMe, so if anyone could contribute to help Grace in her recoveries, it would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely, and Grace will be having her fingers crossed and glued to the screen next week as we head off to national finals. John, thank you for the great grand final wrap, and we can't wait to see you in person in WA next week.
Thank you. I can't wait to give you a high five in person, Megan, and maybe even Darren if he's lucky.
Yeah, he'll have to be very lucky. We'll see you there, John.
All right, see ya.
Well, it all comes down to this in NBL1 East. It is grand final weekend coming right up, and to tell us how we got here is our expert as usual, Jacinta Govind. Welcome, Jacinta, and happy grand final week.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Megan. It sure is great to be heading into the NBL1 East grand final this weekend, but we did have some very killer semi-finals to get through first.
So let's first touch on who's in the grand final. So in the men, it's Maitland v Sutherland, and in the women, it's Manly, Warringah and North Bears. Let's start with the men because the Sharks produced an upset of sorts to win through.
Yeah, they sure did. So the Sutherland Sharks ended the regular season in 5th position, and after dismantling the North Bears in a dominant elimination final last week, they had to head to Canberra to take on the number 1 place COE. But going into this game, there were plenty of question marks around the COE roster, and they only ended up suiting 7 players for this semi-final, with, as we mentioned in previous episodes, the likes of Ben Henshaw recently joining the Perth Wildcats camp, And just announced this week, Johnny Furphy has left early to start his college career in Kansas. But despite being the underdogs, the Sutherland Sharks led the entire game other than about 5 minutes in the first quarter. And while the COE had plenty of scoring opportunities inside the paint, they were just unable to consistently capitalise on these scoring opportunities. Sutherland were very disciplined with their team principles on the offensive end, and with a sound ball movement, they were able to exploit some lapses and double teams in the COE defence, which switched sometimes between a zone and sometimes between a pack defence. Sutherland were leading by 23 points at three-quarter time. However, COE did manage to find their second win in the fourth quarter, and they won that quarter 33-19, shooting 91% for that quarter. But the Sharks were able to keep COE at arm's length and ended up winning the game 82-89. Best on the day was actually Jordan Mitchell from Sutherland Sharks. He led all scorers with 26 points, 11 rebounds and 3 steals, and shot at 60% overall. And he was strongly supported by Lachlan Hutchinson, who had 16 points and 5 rebounds and 7 assists, with COE's best on show being Carl Savage with 19 points.
So the Sharks win through and they play the Mustangs. Now, revenge is sweet, but it's even sweeter in preliminary final weekend.
And revenge seems to be the theme of this NBL1 East final series because, as you mentioned, revenge is sweet for the Maitland Mustangs because they met the Canberra Gunners in the semi-final, who they lost to in the inaugural grand final last year. But as you mentioned, they're going to play the Sharks in the grand final, and Maitland beat the Sharks last year in the semi-final. So it's just this three-way triangle of revenge and vendettas in the East. It makes it very, very interesting. But nonetheless, we'll start with this.
Isn't it?
We'll start with this semi between Maitland and Canberra. It was a grand final rematch, as we mentioned, down at Belconnen Basketball Stadium. It was a very high-scoring, high-octane start to the game, with no team really asserting dominance very early on. The Gunners and the Mustangs ended up being locked at 67 all by three-quarter time, but it was the fourth quarter that really changed the tides for the Mustangs, and they struck a chord with a very strong defensive combination, consisting mostly of bench players. They were able to make life very difficult for the MVP nominee Glenn Morrison from the Canberra Gunners and forced the Gunners as a whole into a very stagnant half-court offense. But while the Mustangs ended up winning the rebound count 31-51, the Gunners managed to get to the free throw line plenty of times, but only making 14 of their 29 attempts certainly hurt in the long run. So the best on the night, though, in this semi-final was James Hunter from the Maitland Mustangs. He had 19 points in 14 minutes. Limited court time was due to some early foul trouble. And like I mentioned, that very strong combination of bench players in the fourth just meant that Luke Boyle, coach of the Mustangs, just put his faith in the bench to get the job done at the end of the day. But youngster Billy Parsons from the Maitland Mustangs also deserves a shout out. Not only did he have 15 points and 12 rebounds, but he did a hell of a job of guarding Morrison. But to Morrison's credit, he still ended the game with 19 points and 6 rebounds. So the Mustangs ended up winning that one 75-58.
So a battle of the lands, Mate and Souther in the men's grand final. Love a bit of that, Jacinta. And let's look at how we discovered the opponents for the women's grand final, starting with the North Bears, because they did a pretty good job in shooting down the Sydney Comets.
Yeah, they certainly did. This matchup was highly anticipated, as you can imagine. North finishing third on the ladder for the season and Comets finishing seventh. And this game was a lot more free-flowing, lots more plays in transition, a lot more attacks on the ring from both teams. And North were very smooth from getting into their half-court sets very quickly with a focus of getting the ball inside because they did have a bit more of a height advantage in that respect over the Comets. But this certainly forced the Comets to play a little bit of catch-up in defensive transition. But to their respect, they did a really good job of limiting North to only 9 fast break points and returning the favour by having 15 fast break points of their own, which certainly came handy in the long run. But North just did it on the defensive end. They really stuck to their defensive principles, which Coach Garlick was definitely happy about, and managed to seal a 20-point win, winning the game 87-67. But I think such a dominant win in the semi-final, lots of credit certainly needs to go to Jolene Anderson from the North Bears, because she really shone for this team on this occasion. She had 26 points and 9 rebounds, which included 5 from 9 from the three-point line. And she was strongly supported by Carla Pittman, who came off the bench on this occasion, and she ended up with 23 points and 7 rebounds. And for the Comets, as you can expect, they were led by Shyla Hill, who was the leader of all of their scorers with 23 points, and youngster Jada Crawshaw ended up having 17 points and 11 rebounds in a very tough battle, which perhaps the 20-point deficit didn't really showed on paper, but perhaps wouldn't really show in the high quality of a game.
Yeah, 2 bright lights for the Comets in that defeat. Now, Norths will play Manly Warringah Sea Eagles, who have soared through to the decider, but how did they get there?
Oh, they did it tough to get there, Megan. They were matched up with COE, who finished 4th. In the regular season, these two teams only met once, and Manly winning on that occasion. But this was a real grind of a game. It was a seesaw, an arm wrestle. It was all of those types of metaphors to help depict what a slog this game was. It was very much bogged down in the half court for both teams. Both teams showing very strong defensive efforts as well. And I don't think either team felt really comfortable or very confident on the offensive end, just because of the high caliber of defense from both teams. So very little shots coming easy, either in transition or the half court for both teams. And despite the strong defensive effort, though, from COE, Manly, to their credit, only committed 10 turnovers, which is super impressive under any circumstances. But COE as well, they only limited Manly to 15 threes. But in reply, Manly made 8 of those 15 threes, which really gave them the edge in the long run as well. And to Manly's defensive credit, they were able to limit superstars like Jada Clark to only shoot 3 from 14 for the entire game. But having said that, again, by three-quarter time, it was only 1 point deficit, and the COE were up 55-56. And Manly managed to overcome this 1 point deficit to win the fourth quarter 26-18. And for Manly Warringah Sea Eagles, it was all about Felicity Henderson, who was part of the Gem squad earlier this year. And we got a sense that she perhaps was playing with something to prove, because again, she had a near triple-double in this semi-final. She's flirted with a triple-double all season, and she ended this game with 21 points, 9 rebounds and 10 assists, and she shot the ball at 64% overall. And their captain, Kim Hodge, was also strongly behind her with 18 points and 8 rebounds. But for the COE, we have to give credit to the likes of Saffron Shields. She really led the way for the COE in this game with 22 points, and Isla Juffmans ended with 15 points and 9 rebounds. So Manly winning that very close and very competitive contest, 81-74.
Yeah, what a tough final that was. Now, Jacinta, before we let you go, let's quickly get a tip from you for both the men's and women's grand finals in NBL1 East this weekend. Who are you thinking?
Oh, now I'm only reluctant to give tips because me personally, I feel like I'm a bad omen. So anytime I give a tip or I wish someone luck, they go ahead and lose. So it's a little bit tricky, but I'll give you my hot take. In the men's grand final, it's going to be really close because, like I said, the Sharks and Maitland actually have some history too, with Maitland beating the Sharks in last year's semi-final. So this time, the Sharks will be out for revenge. And when you look at their bench, they are very closely matched. They are both high on bravado and confidence in finals time. But I think the Mustangs are going to continue their momentum and clinch the championship next weekend. Whereas for North and Manly, we are really splitting hairs when it comes to comparing these two teams to make a prediction. They both have exceptional defensive ratings. They both have exceptional depth on the bench. But I think it's all going to come down to discipline and perhaps winning experience as a group. And I'm going to be tipping Norths on this occasion.
Two cracker grand finals coming up this weekend. We can't wait to see what happens in both of those. Jacinta, thanks so much for your work all season and again today, and we'll see you soon.
Cool. Thank you so much for having me, and happy grand final weekend in the East.
When it comes to drama, nothing is bigger in a preliminary final than overtime. And our guest on this week's show is here to tell us how it all unfolded. And I think he's still in a bit of shock himself. It's a massive welcome to CJ Turnage. Welcome, CJ. Joondalup into the grand final, but my gosh, you had to do it the hard way.
Oh man, beating the defending champs, at their home gym is, pretty special. So that was a big time win for us.
How'd you get it done? We know it went to extra time and then you won by 3. It's as tough as it comes. What's been so special about this group this year?
I don't know, to be honest. I feel like we just kind of started playing good basketball at the right time. We were struggling to figure it out. We had a couple guys come in late in the season, and we didn't have our full team for a lot of the season. So we had a lot of stuff to figure out, a lot of chemistry, because this is all new team. So we just figured it out towards the end of the season, and we just been playing well and been going with it. So
you figured it out all right. Sometimes it can be a good thing, right, when the team does come together late and you've got those last pieces of the puzzle, because it means you're kind of gelling on the run and you're playing and you're getting to know each other, but then you're sort of capturing momentum. Does it feel like that's been the case for you guys? You've got better as the season's gone on?
Absolutely. You always get your roller coasters throughout the year, your ups and downs, but yeah, it honestly just feels like we've just been playing well and we've all been clicking. So just one more win.
How much confidence do you take into a grand final after knocking off, as you said, the reigning national champions?
I mean, we got to be confident, obviously, in ourselves and believe we're going to win. But we know Geraldton is a good team. We split our games with them this year, and we know they'll be tough to beat. They'll have a great crowd. We'll have a great crowd. So we know it'll be a tough task, but we definitely feel good after winning at Rockingham, for sure.
What's sort of been the strength of the side? We know that you've had a lot of different contributors. It's been different guys stand up on different nights, and I guess that was the case for you again in the prelim. You're really playing team basketball.
Yeah, well, really, when you got new guys, it's hard to feed off each other and figure out where guys want the ball and in what spot. So, it took us a while to learn that, but we begin. A lot of people have been contributing. Christian played great defense at Rockingham. We got our captain Jordy off the bench, another good defender. Brian Michael's been playing very well the last, I don't even know how long. He's been playing very well. And, big Giannis, he's been finding his way now and making his impacts like he always does. And then, Quentin, he's been doing that all year. So it's nothing new with him. So, we all just coming together as a group and finding each other in the right spots more than what we did at the start of the year. So it's just, like I said, it started working at the right time, just in time.
So the grand final sold out on Sunday, which is incredible. We know it's going to be a packed house. What would it mean to have success this weekend with this club, with the Wolves?
I mean, it'll mean everything because we're hosting, Wolves are hosting the national finals. So for us to win the next game and to be in the national final with our fans, and we got the best fans in NBL1. So for us to be in that moment and to come this far, it's special. It's really special. So we hoping we just keep putting it together and just keep winning games.
How much have you loved the move to WAA? We know that you dominated Central when you were there, and everywhere you go, you dominate, CJ. Let's be honest. But how much have you loved being out west?
Ah, man. Perth is amazing, honestly. It's been it was a struggle to get used to. It's a bit different basketball-wise between the Central and the West. It was a struggle at first last year to get used to playing over here, but no, it's been great. I love it out here, and playing for the Wolfpack, they take great care of me, and all the fans and all my friends and everybody around me have been real supportive. So it hasn't been too hard of a move, honestly. And Perth is just an amazing place to live anyway. So
we are very excited to get to WA next week for the national finals. As you said, Joondalup are hosting. Now, my team and I are coming over. We're packing the luggage and getting on the flight. What do we expect from the home of the Wolfpack? What are we in for here at Joondalup as you host the biggest weekend in NBL1?
You're in for a lot of people screaming, making a lot of noise, and if the Wolfpack are in that game, it'll be making it very hard on your team. So it's almost like having a sixth player out there, to be honest. Great fans. We have great supporters. I don't know if you saw, we had a video from our home final versus Warwick, and there were people waiting for hours outside of the door outside just for our first home final. So it'll be a great time. It's an amazing place. The facilities are great. Everybody take care of you. Everybody's nice. So yeah, it'll be a great time for sure.
Well, CJ, I don't line up for anything, nightclubs, restaurants, but I will line up to get you to the home of the Wolfpack. Can't wait to get over there next week. And good luck to you and your team in the grand final this weekend. And who knows, we might see you next weekend on your very own home floor.
Hope so. Hope to see you soon.
Well, it is the final weekend of the NBL1 Central season. 2 championships are on the line, and to talk about the 4 teams that are there on grand final weekend, we head to South Australia to chat to Tristan Prentice. And Tristan, happy grand final week.
Oh, happy grand final week indeed. NBL1 Central grand final week, Megan, is one of my favourite times of the year, and we're going to have 4 different teams this time around, so that's going to make it very, very interesting come Saturday night, the Adelaide 36ers Arena.
Yes, a fresh and new look grand final weekend. So in the women, it's Norwood and Sturt. In the men, West Adelaide and Forestville. But let's start with the women, because no surprise, it was Ali Wilson who led the Flames into the decider.
Each year, Megan, there's always one team that decides to pop up out of nowhere. And in some ways, it was the Norwood Flames this year in the women's. And Ali Wilson, as you said, put the Norwood Flames into their first grand final since 2016. It was a really raucous home crowd for the Norwood Flames. I was there in person watching things take place, and the Southern Tigers, all that finals experience, but they missed some crucial free throws throughout the game. They actually hit 13 of 26 from the free throw line, and that made it extremely difficult for them to get the win in the end. They went down 79 to 69. It was a little bit of a comeback from the Tigers in the third quarter through Bianca Stazanowski. That's a name to watch out for in the future. She drained some big-time shots. She had 9 points in the third quarter, but you have to hand it to Ali Wilson. She was deadly again, Megan. Had 14 points in the third quarter. Ended up finishing with 34 points, 17 rebounds, 4 assists and 2 steals. A couple of cameo appearances from Shana Thompson with 15 points. Sophie Kerridge had 12 points, 5 assists, and another outstanding job on Morgan Yeager, although Morgan Yeager definitely put in her all for the Southern Tigers with 18 points and 5 rebounds. And they also got a little bit of help, the Tigers, from Brittany Hernandez, who had a 10-point and 13 rebound double-double. And Molly McKendrick, despite being held really well throughout the game, she missed a triple-double with 8 points, 8 assists, and 10 rebounds. For the Norwood Flames, who were sort of languishing near the bottom of the ladder in the first half of the season, have ended all the way up at the end of the last day, Megan.
Yeah, that is a huge rise for them, and congrats to the Southern Tigers on their season. As you mentioned, some of their stars have had incredible 2023s and did very well again in the preliminary final. Let's turn focus to the men's now, because the Bearcats are into their first grand final in a couple of years too.
Certainly are. They're into their first grand final since 2017, and they had the Tasmanian jack jumper, Anthony Drimmick, to really thank for that. He started the game on fire. He had 17 first half points, including an enormous slam that really put down the point on the Sturt Sabres. They jumped out 25-12 in the first quarter, but the Sabres, Jordan Forbes and Jacob Rigoni, brought them back within 35-26. But it was Drimmick and Nick DeSantis, who just tends to get downhill with the dribble, he does, and he helped himself to 18 points in the game, a majority of them coming in the second quarter. But after halftime, it was just all Bearcats. They just dominated all facets of the game. Mitch McCarron was delivering, dishing, and even helped himself to 21 points, 9 assists, and 6 rebounds. Drimmick finished with 27 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists. And Lachlan Ulbrich got the better of Tobias Dowdell, who had a really good start for the Sturt Sabres in this one, again with his experience. But Ulbrich finished with 14 points and 6 rebounds. And Dean Nyberg has found a way to get this West Adelaide team together after their first finals loss. And they'll be ready to go for the Forestville Eagles on Saturday night now.
We can't wait for this weekend's grand final action. Now, we know the Sabres are one of two undefeated teams left in NBL1, so they're taking on the Flames. The teams play for the first time in a grand final. And then in the men's, we've got the Bearcats and Forestville, and they haven't played in a decider since 2013.
That's correct. You're absolutely right about West Adelaide and Forestville meeting for the first time since 2013. There'll be a couple of players that are left over from them and a coach as well. Adam Doyle, Jake Rios, and of course Andy Simons were there 10 years ago when the Eagles won that grand final, and Spadabecchia, Anthony Spadabecchia, he will be around for this West Adelaide grand final too. It's interesting you touch on the Norwood Flames and the Sturt Sabres in the women's. It's the first time, as you said, they've met in their history in a grand final, but that's surprising considering that Norwood and Sturt in the women's were pretty strong between 2007 and 2013-14, but they never quite met in the final game. They met in a couple of prelims and a few other games, but they've never met in the decider, so it's going to be a cracking Saturday night, Megan. I can't wait for it. It's going to be incredible basketball to watch. Defense versus offense. For West Adelaide, to be a case of whether star power can overcome the continuity of the Forestville Eagles. There's a lot of storylines to come out of this one this weekend.
We can't wait to see what happens. Happy calling, Tristan, and enjoy the grand finals.
Thank you very much, Megan, and always a delight to talk NBL1 Central with you and everyone around Australia.
Well, then there were four. There are just four teams remaining in NBL1 South because it is grand final week, and to talk about the two massive games coming up this weekend is our expert in Victoria, Matt Hickey. Matt, welcome and happy grand final week.
It's huge, isn't it? It feels like it's been a long time coming, but I am pumped for the deciders this weekend.
Well, let's start with the women because Bendigo came oh so close to experiencing their first loss and having curtains close on their season.
I know, imagine if that was their first loss of the season in the preliminary final. I mean, it was so close. They sneak over the line by 1 point over Mount Gambier, who were my tip for the championship heading into the final series, and they almost got the job done on the road. It was an incredible game, just back and forth the whole time, and then Kelly Wilson steps up like she often does. Just a nice little free throw line jumper inside the final 30 seconds to put Bendigo up by a point. The Pioneers don't get a shot off down the other end, and it is good night for the Pioneers. So an incredible game of basketball back and forth, and you could see the relief from Bendigo in the way that they celebrated. They were very, very happy to get through that one.
They were great scenes, especially those from Meg McKay, who's just had another incredible season. She really is such a big presence for them.
It certainly is. Just stunning. 20 and 20. I mean, you can't really ask for much more from your big. And as I always say, she just does it at such a high clip and such an efficient way. Amy Atwell chips in with, just a casual 33 points as well. So the big guns came to play, that's for sure. And Bendigo through the big dance, as many expected, but maybe not as easily as they would have liked.
Yeah, they had to work hard to get there in the end. And then down the highway at Geelong Arena was the other preliminary final between the Supercats and the Falcons, and it was Waverley who got over the top of them to book a spot in the grand final against the Braves.
Yeah, I mean, you might see the margin at 11 points in the end. Waverley win 85-74, but there was no quarter that was decided by more than 4 points. So Waverley won every quarter, but they only won them by 4 points or less. So it was a grind throughout, but the Falcons get over the line. And the difference for me was Sophia Lacandro. She comes off the bench, hits 17 points, 3 or 4 from downtown, and Geelong manages 4 bench points themselves. So that really is the difference in the game when you consider the margin. Beck Cole, as we always expect, was fantastic. She had 23 points and 7 assists. And now we get the two teams that were really 1v2 for the majority of the year until the little final run. But we get to see the big dogs in the grand final.
So obviously Bendigo beat Waverley twice during the season because they are undefeated. They beat everyone. But can Waverley produce something on the biggest stage to upset the apple cart and win the championship?
Well, I mean, you'd be a fool to say no, considering the talent that Waverley do have, and I think that they will be buoyed and be given a serious shot of confidence by looking at the preliminary final and seeing that Mount Gambier took Bendigo all the way. Now, according to the stats, obviously they're untouchable. They haven't lost a single game, but winning by only a point, it took a clutch jumper at the very end to get them over the line. I think the Falcons might take a little bit of hope in. They're definitely not the favourites, and that's it doesn't take an expert to figure that one out, but it's going to be a really interesting battle. Of course, they played off in the qualifying final, and it was Bendigo who got the win. During the season, the Braves just blew them out in what was a really lopsided result. It's going to be interesting. I think it has to be stopping Meg McKay. I don't know if they can do it, but if they can, they'll go a long way to causing an upset.
Let's take a look at the men's side of things now, because there were two tales in the preliminary finals, one of defence and one of offence, particularly a massive first quarter. But let's start with the defence, because we know that's what wins championships, and it certainly helped win a preliminary final.
It certainly did. I mean, it's the way that the Knox Raiders have been doing it all year, relying heavily on their defence. They are the number one defensive team in the league during the regular season, allowing the least points per game. So they win the way they've won all year, and that was defence. They get over Mount Gambier 68-63. Now, we've seen over the last two seasons how much of a strong offensive team the Pioneers are. So to be able to keep Mount Gambier and the way they play just to 63 points is a phenomenal effort, and obviously a massive team effort. It's not just one guy who does it on the defensive end of the floor. The Pioneers only shot 32% from the field, under 20% from the three-point line, and it was KJ Fegan who came up big for the Raiders on the other end. 19 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 steals, nearing a triple-double. In such a low-scoring game, a performance like that just really stands out.
Let's take a look at the other preliminary final, because Diamond Valley had soared in this final series to become sort of the fairy tale story so far, but that fairy tale came to a very harsh and abrupt end because Sandringham were on fire once again.
Yeah, the Sabres really came to play from the very opening tip. Diamond Valley, they have been the giant killers. It wouldn't have shocked anybody if they managed to pull off another upset in the prelim, but it was not meant to be. And the Sabres, they really put it away early. 40 points in the first quarter. It was a 40-22 first quarter. They didn't look back from there. The lead at one point got out to 33, I believe. Ben Eyre was fantastic. He's having a great season for Sandringham, 27 points and 8 assists. Dane Pinot had 25 rebounds, which is a ludicrous number. He was cleaning the glass like it was nobody's business. And they won the rebound count 52-35. And, I mean, you just have a look at that game. It ended up, I think, 107-86, or a 21-point margin. They brought it back a little bit from that 33. But when you put on 40 points in the first quarter, it's a long way back as an opposition.
The Great Dane of Windex just cleaning everything up, and we love to see it. Let's look to the grand final. So we've got Knox and Sandringham, and as it turns out, it's a home grand final for Knox.
Yeah, they get lucky in a sense because the games are played at the State Centre. They managed to get the home grand final. They did finish on top, of course, but for a team like Bendigo in the women's division, who also finished on top, they have to do a long travel down to play at the State Centre. So they get a little bit lucky there, the Raiders. It's not too far for Sandringham, though, so it's not like they have to travel a mile to come and play the Raiders. I mean, Knox, best defence in the league, as I mentioned, allowing just under 76 points per game in the regular season. Sandringham had one of the best offences, so there is really that tale of high-powered offence against elite defence. Who comes on top? I mean, well, that's anybody's guess. If I were to try and make a prediction, you'd probably lean towards Knox, just the way that grand finals tend to be played. They're sometimes a bit of a defensive grind in terms of who can find rhythm. But it's going to be interesting through the year. They split the two meetings that they had against each other. It's really anybody's pick, but I think it's going to be an entertaining game. And for me, I think the X factor might be CJ Asuncion-Bird for Sandringham. He's a guy who's flying just a little under the radar because of some of the bigger names that they've got. If he can come and get hot early, I think the Sabres could be in for a good day.
Made for finals, CJ. Matt, let's get your tips. So Knox and Sandringham in the NBL1 South Men's Grand Final.
I think I'm leaning towards Knox, but it's going to be a flip of the coin.
And then Bendigo and Waverley, will it be the perfect season for Bendigo on the way to a title, or will Waverley produce the biggest upset of all?
I've predicted against Bendigo once. I will not do it again because they've made me look foolish, so I'm going to go with the Braves.
Thanks so much, Matt. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll see you next week at the National Finals.
Can't wait.
So there you have it, 8 championships on the line this weekend right around Australia. What an amazing weekend of NBL1 hoops it's going to be. Good luck to all the grand finalists. Of course, you can watch the games on KO Freebies. Stay tuned to the NBL1 app and our socials for the latest and all the highlights. And we will be joining you next week from Joondalup, where we will be for the national finals. We cannot wait to get there. It is going to be so good. We'll be doing the show from there and bringing you lots of content and behind the scenes action from the entire tournament. And we know who is tipping off the tournament. It is Rockingham, the men's national champs of last year, taking on the Ipswich Force. So that is our first game on Friday night, and you can get your tickets now via Intix. We've got that link up there for you to go to, snap up your tickets, and we will see you next Friday night in Joondalup for the 2023 NBL1 National Finals. Enjoy a massive grand final weekend, and we'll see you from WA next week.